Hey everyone, just making a quick video on what it was like for somebody who's used Macs exclusively for 10 years to then switch over to Windows. I'm somebody who's used, who's had a Mac Mini, MacBook Pro, iMac, every Apple Mac related product I've had. And after about 10 years, I switched over to Windows. I've been using the Dell XPS 15. I used the Alienware laptop, the 15-inch model, for a very short period of time. It was too big and bulky for my needs. And I also used two Razer Blades. One was the Razer Blade 14, which we have a video on and discuss why we absolutely hated it, and the Razer Blade 15, which we've had two units, but they've had horrendous backlight bleed, which might explain why Razer are reluctant to ever stock these at the moment. I think they're just sick of people sending them back, and they're trying to make sure that they get their quality up. But the main reason we're here is to see what it was like switching over. Now, my main worry immediately was, okay, so with my MacBook, mail, notes, calendars, all synced great. I love the fact that I could send text messages straight from my laptop. They'd show up on my laptop when I had a text message. I wouldn't have to reach for my phone. I could take calls from my phone. These are all great features on the Mac that I personally thought I was going to desperately miss. And to be honest, the only one I desperately miss is messages, because whilst you can now send text messages, I also switched my phone over from an iPhone to a Samsung Galaxy S8, and whilst I can send text messages through Android messages, I can, if you download that on your phone, you download it on your laptop. The only difference is you need to have a browser window open for it. It's not just at the bottom of your screen in the in the bar at the bottom of your screen where you get a little ping and it shows you that you've got a message. It's not as integrated, but it works fine. I use WhatsApp almost exclusively now anyway, just because sending picture messages through normal method charges you, and by the end of the month I could be, the amount of picture messages I send, it could cost a lot. In terms of calendars and notes and stuff, I actually much prefer Notes, Google Notes, than I do with Apple's Notes. It's much more advanced. Once you get used to it, it's fine, it's easy to use, but again, you need to open a web browser window in order for it to happen. There's not specifically a program for it, which I don't quite understand why. I don't understand why all these have to be done through the web, why there's not a program. I appreciate you need to be connected to the internet, but why is there not a program that just, that you open it and it just brings up the interface and you can just go ahead and use it. So it hasn't been as big an adjustment as I thought it would be. Once I got through having to get used to opening web browsers to do a lot of stuff, it's been absolutely fine. I genuinely thought it was going to be 10 times harder than it is. Once I gotten over missing messages, it's been fine. And to be honest with you, I mean, as far as the phone's concerned, if the Galaxy S8 cost the exact same as the iPhone 10, I would buy the Galaxy S8. The Galaxy S8 actually ended up costing me £400, whereas the iPhone 10 is £1,000. But I actually never thought I'd say this, but I actually prefer using my Android than I did, with Apple's iPhones. But back to the laptops. Other than that, there are a few things that I desperately miss. I love when I can just click in the search bar. I can click on Spotlight in a MacBook Pro, and straight away it would give me what I was looking for. Whereas with Windows, when you type in the search, you press enter. If you've got a couple of hard drives hooked up, or if you're sometimes sitting there for 2-3 minutes for something that's instantaneous on the Mac. I also really miss the fact that on a Mac I could highlight any video file, or any file for that matter, press spacebar, and pop straight up on the screen. I can look at it right away. Whereas on a Windows machine, it's a little bit more cumbersome. That feature isn't there. I know there's a program called Sheen or Sheer or something like that. I found it to be pretty buggy, especially when playing back videos, so I uninstalled it. But with the Windows machine, I need to double click the video file, it opens in VLC, and then I need to close VLC and then double click on the next video file and wait for it to open up in VLC. So it's, there are definitely stuff that I miss in that sense. Has Windows given me anything over the Mac where I'm truly, I'm like, okay, so now if I went back to Mac, I'd miss this feature? Probably not, other than the fact that I can game on my PC laptop very easily. It's, you know, it's fine. It works great with the NVIDIA software. It will optimize the game automatically. There's no more of that what I had in my head that you'd need to go in and find the best configuration. There's none of that. And simple fact is, I've got a 2018 MacBook Pro 8th gen CPU with the highest kitted out graphics card, and it can't play games anywhere near like, can barely play games full stop, but it can't play them anywhere near like the PC machine can. The other feature that I heavily miss is in Mac you've got Mail, and the Mail app is, again, it's fast, it's just integrated so well, it's easy to use. I've tried Thunderbird, I've tried Outlook, I've tried a whole bunch of different stuff, and none of them seem just as clean and easy as to use as Mail. So I, again, am logging in. I know Google have their own Gmail application, but for some reason you can only log in one user at a time. You then need to click on the top corner and change your user one by one. It can't just integrate all your mailboxes into one, which is very frustrating and very annoying. Again, these aren't complex. Well, to me, they don't seem like complex things. You know, like to make an app that, you know, for mail that is reliable and you can put numerous. You know, that you can put numerous accounts in. And again, I tried Outlook. I had quite a few problems with it. I've tried the Mail app that's built into Windows, and I've tried it with several different accounts, Gmail accounts, Yahoo accounts, work accounts, and I always seem to, within a week or so, get the constant pop-up message telling me my password's incorrect. I've been online, tons of people have had this problem for years, and there just doesn't seem to be a real solution to it. If you've got an account that has that issue, you just seem to be stuck with it. It's very frustrating, and these are issues that I haven't had with the Mac. And the one thing is that I can say, which is one of the main reasons I consider going back to MacBook Pro, and I'll explain why I haven't. The one thing is that blue screen of death on the PC, where it says your machine's run into a problem, and therefore we're going, you know, it's going to restart, please wait, and then it goes 5%, 10%, 15%, you're just waiting there for the thing to restart. I've literally had, between the XPS 15, the Razer Blade 14, and the Razer Blade 15, I've literally had more crashes on the PC in the last year than I've had in the last 10 years on a MacBook Pro. Now, a lot of the times I haven't minded. Like the last time it happened, I was playing a game and literally 2 minutes into it, just clonked out, just completely clonked out, and I had to restart the machine. But there are times where it's happened where it's really annoyed me. I was working on a on a Premiere Pro project recently, and even though I'd set it to save automatically every 5 minutes, it hadn't saved for about 2 hours. I got the blue screen of death for no apparent reason. I wasn't doing anything overly strenuous, and I lost 2 hours worth of work. I had to go back and redo those 2 hours. It's extremely frustrating. The other time I find it does it a lot as well is if you've got 2 or 3 hard drives connected and you're transferring files between the hard drives, that blue screen of death seems to love popping up. And this always happens with different hard drives, so it's not the actual hard drive that's given in or anything like that. So the stability factor is definitely there with the MacBook Pro. I don't like how on the XPS 15, the 4K model, things just don't seem to really, Windows just doesn't seem to really play nice with 4K. You always seem to get some sort of issue with scaling, which again, on Mac, because Apple only have a few machines to worry about, you know, the scaling is always spot on, so it's not as much of an issue. Other than that, I mean, the only things I can say is the build quality is definitely, Apple is still by far the best. The speakers, I don't listen to music top volume from my laptop speakers anyway, so it doesn't really make much of a difference, and the speakers on the Razer Blade are perfectly fine for me. The trackpad, definitely miles better on the MacBook Pro. I mean, it's still good on the Razer Blade, not a big fan of the XPS 15 trackpad, but I use a mouse anyway, so whatever device I'm using a mouse, so I don't really care what the trackpad is, but that's just personally for me. If you're a trackpad user, no doubt you'll be more happy with the MacBook Pro. I do miss the escape key on the Windows machine when I switch over to MacBook Pro, because having that touch bar at the top where the escape key sometimes isn't there, or you just reach for it and you miss it a little bit to the left or right because it's moved around. The touch bar is such a gimmick. I really, really wish they'd give you an option not to have it there. I mean, I know they do on the 13-inch base model, but then you're going to be stuck with the last gen processors. So the screen, you know, the 4K screen is a higher resolution than what you get on the Retina MacBook Pro, but then I'm mainly using the Razer Blade 14, and that's only a 1080p screen, but that's perfectly fine with me because, to be honest with you, if I had them side by side, yeah, you can see the difference, but I don't sit there with them side by side, and 1080p is perfectly fine for a, you know, 14-inch laptop. The one thing that I truly missed as soon as I had the MacBook Pro for a few days that I had to use was there was 2 occasions, one where I went to plug in a hard drive and I thought, oh great, I need to plug in 3 hard drives and I've only got 2 dongles. I had to go to the Apple store, which was in the same shopping center luckily, and buy a dongle to be able to plug in a hard drive into a £3,000 machine. It's ridiculous. It frustrates me beyond belief. You want to plug in HDMI to show a presentation or to play a film off your laptop, that's another £70 for an HDMI Apple adapter. It's infuriating, and it's actually bugged me a lot more than I thought it would. That definitely, Windows machines definitely have the edge over Apple because of that. And again, I don't understand why Apple don't bring it back. I mean, like, you know, yeah, sure, we're heading in the USB-C direction, but we're at least a year, if not more, away from it, at least. So, you know, as far as the ports go, definitely Windows machine. But the reliability, as I said, the amount of crashes I've had on Windows machines, the reliability is and in terms of build quality, if you look at our Razer Blade build quality, if you look at our Razer Blade review, you'll see the build quality issues that we've had. But in terms of the build quality, you know, again, Apple are the best out there. Now, the one thing I will say is the issue I had with my Dell, which was my fault more than anything, I had to ship it back. I had to wait for it to receive it back, which was fine because I had the Razer Blade. Some people might not be in that situation where they have more than one laptop lying around. When I had issues with the Razer Blade, again, if you look at our Razer review, it took 62 emails to identify a very simple fault. The keys didn't work. It took 62 emails forward and back from Razer before they agreed to replace it. Then I had to ship it away and wait weeks before I got a replacement. And again, you know, if you've only got one machine, you're going to be weeks without it. You better have a backup machine. Whereas with Apple, at least you can walk into an Apple store, put your laptop in front of them and say, what's the problem? You know, the Genius Bar guys will figure out what the problem is, and you know right away. You're not waiting weeks while your laptop goes halfway across the world for someone to take a look at it once it, you know, sits in a long line of other laptops that are waiting to be fixed. And I'm not holding my breath with the new Razer Blades, because the Razer Blade 15 has been out of stock for a couple of months now, and the reason, you know, there is stock every now and then, but it goes within a couple of hours, and the reason for that isn't because, you know, they can't manufacture them fast enough. The reason for that is because the amount of people that have had the backlight bleed problem with the Razer Blade 15s, you spend over $2,000 on a laptop, that kind of backlight bleeding is not acceptable. I think it's because Razer Blade are holding back until they fix this issue, so they stop getting, you know, RMAs all the time, people replacing their laptops. Overall, for me, it comes down to one thing: the operating system. I use mainly Premiere Pro, and I use Google Chrome and Word. Once you're in Premiere Pro, once you're in Chrome, once you're, you know, in Microsoft Word, it doesn't make a difference if you're using a MacBook Pro or a Windows machine, because the interface that you're dealing with is, you know, from the program. And especially if you're using an external keyboard and mouse, then it makes you won't even be able to tell the difference if someone hid the machine, which one of the two you're using. So when it comes down to that, you got to ask yourself: is the program you're using exclusive to Apple? If not, if it's available on both, then you just have to ask yourself, okay, which one does it run better on? If it runs equally on both, or if it runs you know, better on Windows, then you're exclusively paying double, if not triple, for your laptop because it's got the Apple logo on it and the build quality. If you love the operating system that much, then fine. But this Razer Blade can be had for about £1,000 now, and it has a 1060 6GB graphics card, which for someone who wants to do video editing, it's a better graphics card than, you know, the MacBook Pro, which has a 4GB Radeon graphics card. And you know, because of that, I can't justify spending an extra £2,000 on a MacBook Pro. I could buy a Razer Blade, a Samsung S8, go on a holiday and buy a crappy secondhand used car for the same price as a MacBook Pro. This is £3,006, whereas the Razer Blade came in at, you can pick it up for about £1,000 now. Albeit if you upgrade the RAM on the Razer Blade to match what this MacBook Pro has, you'll come to about £1,300. But £1,300 versus £3,006. You know, once I'm in Premiere Pro, once I'm in Word and Chrome and Excel, it doesn't make a difference which computer I'm using, especially if you're connecting it to an external monitor and stuff. You know, when I'm on the road, sure, the MacBook Pro looks nicer, the screen is nicer, has a much more chic design and feel to it, of course. But to be honest with you, I can't stand the keyboard on the MacBook Pro. The new one, you know, these are the 3rd gen butterfly keys, and they've dampened it a little bit, which I think has actually made the feel, for me personally, it's made the feel worse. I love that you can light the keys individually on a few Windows machines. This allows you to, you know, on programs like Premiere Pro, I've set all the red keys to be my edit keys and cut keys. But on the MacBook, you don't have that option. And also, I love that extra little bit of travel. It makes you actually feel like you're pressing a key instead of just tapping on a piece of glass or tapping on a table. So I actually do prefer using the keyboard more on the Razer and on the Dell XPS 15. But, you know, overall, as I said, it just comes down to what programs are you using. If they're only available on one machine, then you're locked into that machine anyway. If they're available on both, then you're basically paying double, sometimes triple, for just the premium of having an Apple machine. The hardware inside the laptop definitely doesn't warrant the price tag. You're basically paying the Apple tax. So just ask yourself, are you willing to pay that extra $1,000, that extra £1,500 or dollars in order to have that Apple logo there and in order to have Mac OS instead of Windows 10? You know, yes, Mac OS is clean. For me, it's cleaner, it's easier to use, and it's much, much, much more reliable from my personal experience. But is it, you know, does that justify spending an extra $1,500 in order to not have so many crashes? For me, again, I'm sure there's a lot of Windows users who haven't had the kind of crashes I've had, but I tend to stress my laptop out every now and then. The choice is ultimately yours. Personally, I'm sticking with the Windows machine because if they were the same price, no doubt I'd go with the MacBook Pro. Even if there was a 20-30% difference in price, no doubt I'd go with the MacBook Pro. But the fact that it costs 200% more, to me, that's, you know, yeah, sure, it's more reliable, but I'm not going to go and pay that kind of price for it. And it's more than anything, it's a moral issue for me. You know, I could easily sell the Razer Blade, you know, I'll put a couple of grand on top and get the MacBook, but morally, it just doesn't seem right. There's no justification there. I'm literally paying for the cosmetic look, because as I said, I don't spend much time just hovering around in Windows or in Mac OS doing nothing. I'm in the programs, and the programs are the same for me when I'm actually using them on both machines. Hope you found this somewhat helpful, and I hope you found it helpful, the whole explanation about, you know, the transition wasn't nowhere near as bad as I thought. Yes, there's programs I miss. Yes, I miss the mail app, and I miss being able to text from my laptop as easily. You can still do all this stuff, it's just not as easy. But for me, you know, to pay that kind of extra money just to have a little bit more of a convenience, it just doesn't make sense for me.